Welcome everyone. Here we are with the sports writers. We have Nick Giannino up on my beside me on the squares, and Matt Williams from the Salem News, Nick Kukuru, former sports editor of the Gloucester Times. I hope you caught his columns in Monday's papers, the Gloucester Times, Salem News, and so on. Kind of a so long thing. He's leaving the Gloucester Times, and Nick, you're our guest of honor here today. We're going to elevate you to that position. It's not that lofty of a
Officially guest
position.
status now. 2 days, a lot changes.
Yeah, a special guest status. And so, boy, we're glad to see you, Nick. Congrats, by the way, on moving on with the new position and so on. And but I guess maybe share with our listeners a little bit of what you were thinking of when you wrote the columns, that appeared in Monday's papers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I just kind of wanted to, just let everyone know how much I enjoyed, the last 16 years. I mean, I'm not, leaving on a sour note or anything like that. I just kind of was just kind of a little bit of time for a, change in my life. My kids are a little older. They're all going to be in the same elementary school this coming fall. So I figured now would be a good time, to change up the schedule here. But yeah, I did. I mean, I really enjoyed it every step of the way. All three, schools that I covered were all great to deal with. They all, delivered some, big time memories. And I don't know. I think, I don't know. Just the first thing that I always thought of was just kind of looking back on all the things that I covered. The 16 years is not it's no, Phil or, my grandfather who was there for, over 40. But I saw a lot in 16 years and a lot of interesting, a lot of interesting games, moments, and all that stuff.
I'll let Nick and Matt jump in here in a second, but I just got one question. Your grandfather, Doc Enos,
Mhm.
legendary reporter at the Gloucester Times, sports reporter. I remember going to games where he was there with his typewriter. I know you don't bring the typewriter anymore where
Yeah,
you work,
I bring the
but
laptop sometimes.
yeah. But I guess tell me, obviously he had some influence with you as
Mhm.
far as a career choice.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I just saw how much he enjoyed it. That's why I kind of wanted to follow that path. And I used to go to everything with him when I was a kid, but mostly hockey and the Williamsport games back. There was Gloucester American and Gloucester National back then, and me and my cousin would go with him to pretty much every game, no matter where it was. He'd always bring us, and that's where I kind of started to follow it and really really enjoy it.
Matt, Nick.
No, we're gonna miss him. That's for sure. Um, yeah, sorry, I lost you there. I had a message here. I'm working on a
Oh,
story. So you're just asking about Nick's experience?
yeah. I mean, yeah. Any thoughts on Nick or
Well,
and his?
yeah, we're gonna miss him. Like I said, he did so much for that area, and as sharing stories between our papers, we're always giving each other different stuff. So definitely gonna miss those daily interactions and editing his stories, him editing our stories, and just the day to day of it all. So going to be tough to replace you, Nick. We'll see what we come up with here and how what the direction of the sports section over in Gloucester goes. But I'm sure we'll be chipping in and yeah, continue to read.
Absolutely. Well, I say I kind of realized I created my own Twitter account. No
Yeah,
need
there
to
you go.
follow. I don't even plan on posting anything. I just like to follow along with what's going on. But
Yeah, because
yeah,
you've been tweeting from the Gloucester Times sports account, right? That's been your main
yeah,
account these years. Yeah.
yep, yep. Since I think 2010, I think Matt Langoni implemented it, and three of us shared it then. But it's kind of just been me for the last 11 years.
Okay.
Wow.
Someone will have to
Mhm.
pick that up. We don't want that to just die.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah, exactly. 2,000 whopping followers. Big
Hey,
deal.
Yeah, more than some people, more than a lot of people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Matt, how about yourself? What are your thoughts here? Obviously, uh, Nick's, kind of grew up in Gloucester and lives in Gloucester and all of that. So really entrenched in the community.
Well, tell us about the glory days.
Mhm.
What was in fact the best Gloucester team, or maybe you can break it up into like the best offense, the best defense between
Mhm.
like those Super Bowl teams of what was it, 07, 09, and 10 were all 13 and 0.
Yeah. It's funny. That's such a tough question. I personally thought the last one, 2010, was the best, but I did a summer series about what 2015, 2016 with the best 12 Gloucester football teams of all time, and I put 2007 ahead of them because more people seem to be into 2007 over them. So it's a tough question. When I went and did it, I went back and I asked, Matt Langoni and Rich Slate, who, we all covered all 4 of those Super Bowls, and 3 teams, we all had a different answer. So that's how close it is. But I thought that 2010 team, the last one, they were a lot of the core from the year before, and they kind of had the most pressure on them. I feel like their expectations were 13-0 or bust, and they did it. They took care of business, and they won 2 playoff games. Their 2 playoff games, they won by 3 scores in Division 1A, which Gloucester does not even come close to playing, and now they're in Division 5. So I thought that team in 2010 was just a well-oiled machine. But of course, they were all pretty memorable. I mean, like I mentioned, the Snow Bowl in 2009 against Bridgewater Raynham. It was really near blizzard conditions, and they kind of stomped Bridgewater Raynham. That was with Connor Russell and Brett Cahill. So that was probably the best 1-2 combination that they had during that run. And then 2007, they beat Hingham 41-0. That was the first Super Bowl I had covered, and it was just a massacre. I thought Hingham was one of the most intimidated teams I've ever seen in a pregame warmup in my life, especially in that setting. They wanted nothing to do with it, and it kind of showed. It was 35-0 at halftime. And that team, that 2007 team, which that seems to be the more consensus, was the best team of that run. They won their 2 playoff games by a combined score of 80-0. So that was a pretty memorable one as well. But if you ask me, gun to my head, I'm saying 2010.
That's sort of where I was. Was Cahill there for 09 and 10? What year
He
did
was just
graduate?
there for 09.
Just 09.
Mhm.
Okay, because he was
Yeah.
probably the best quarterback of the bunch,
Yes,
which
absolutely.
sort of gave them more options and stuff like that. But interesting. The best defense overall was probably the 2000 team, if I had to guess. I mean, you were around, not
Yeah,
writing for the paper, obviously, but that was
I was a junior on that team. JV player roaming the sidelines. But
I'm
yeah,
picking
that
up
team.
the tackles and
So
garbage time in some of these games because it's some big scores here. But I mean, geez,
yeah,
this team gave up 2 touchdowns in a game, I think twice the
and
whole season, and went 11-0 and had Jim Eunice on it. So I mean, that's pretty good.
I'll say this: I was, we killed everybody so much that year. I was on the field with the backup of third string defense for at least half of those touchdowns allowed that year. The starters didn't
Yeah,
allow.
exactly.
The starters weren't allowing it. It
Yeah,
was the backups
exactly.
that were allowing those touchdowns.
And
So
I
you
thought,
so you were kind of a touchdown leader then, Nick,
Yeah,
during this era.
exactly.
I mean,
Pretty
that's
Okay.
one
much.
way to look at it. But you'd have to, you'd have to mention that 2010 Division One North baseball final. Or was it 09?
Yeah.
Gloucester beats St. John's Prep team that had 2 future professional athletes on it in Mike Yastrzemski and Pat Connaughton. I mean, that just doesn't happen too often in this area that you have a team that has 2 future professional athletes on it, and then they lose not just to a team like from the South Shore, Zavarian, some other stacked team or whatever, but they lose to a little team that works out on the beach up in Gloucester. I mean, that's really right up there with any of the great upsets in North Shore history. I mean, it's got to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely the crowning moment for the history of Gloucester baseball. They've kept up a good run since then, but I mean that's still, I think that it was an 8-7 game against the Prep. That's still maybe one of the most memorable and wacky games I'd ever covered. I remember Dylan Mackey threw 175 pitches, but he got pulled after 130, and then they put in a reliever who got a scoreless inning without recording an out himself. And so they put Mackey back in the next inning, and the Prep tied it up, and he pulled out with with 175 pitches, and I remember it was a tie game, bases loaded, and the Prep's best hitter was up. I think his name was Carmaine at
Yep.
the time that season, and he hit at the lacquer, just skied a fly ball right under the warning track with the bases loaded, and then Gloucester got up the next inning. Back-to-back doubles ended it. Ryan
Great.
Cusick was
Yeah, I
with the
remember
big
it was like
hit. Yeah.
some back and forth stuff, just kind of one of those baseball games where nobody would go away type of thing, you
Mhm.
know.
Especially those 9-inning Division One games, they get crazy late. You
No,
run out of
exactly.
pitching
Yeah, in
pretty
those days,
quickly.
exactly. That's a great point. They were 9 innings
Mhm.
in those days, and it did. It got absolutely crazy late. Speaking of which, I guess we'd be remiss not to discuss the Intertown League's fiasco
Yeah.
over the weekend. My goodness, 12 innings between Hamilton and Manchester on Saturday, and they're lost to history because of the ITL bylaws. A couple people said to me, I can't believe that, this game never happened. It's so crazy. And I said, well, I'm going to put all the results in the newspaper so it'll be down in the record books as if it happened.
So, Matt, back up a little bit. What
Yeah.
happened here for our listeners?
So this was game 4 of the ITL finals, with Hamilton ahead 2-1 in the series, best of 5. So Hamilton needing to win, Manchester looking to force the winner take all game 5. And the great Rusty Tucker takes the ball. He's untouchable early in the game. I think he had 10 Ks through 3 innings. Didn't give up a hit until I think the 3rd or the 4th inning. Manchester had leads of 1-0 and 2-1. Nick Frenny comes up in the top of the 6th and hits a solo homer to tie it at 2-2. And it stayed that way until the top of the 12th. Tucker went 10 innings, 160 pitches, struck out 17. I think he only walked 1. Hamilton's starting pitcher only went 4. Carter Coffey ended up coming in and throwing 7 scoreless in relief. Hamilton, had 15 hits in the game, so they left the potential go-ahead run on base in the 7th. They had the go-ahead run gunned down at home plate on a double play in the 8th. I think Tucker threw a 1-2-3 9th, and they had a couple base runners in the 10th as well. So just every moment of this game was tense, crazy. The umpires getting into it. Just so much passion out there on the field. Hamilton finally takes a 4-2 lead in the 12th. And in the bottom of the 12th, Sachem Ramos hits a 2-run bomb to tie it up again. And that was with nobody out. And Manchester got another hit, threatened to walk off and win. And, Hamilton escapes the jam. It's 4-4 after 12. The umpires call it on account of darkness. And under the ITL bylaws, if a game's not finished, you have to start over from scratch. It's not like the high school rules or the Major League Baseball rules where you suspend it and pick it up the next day. Like typically if this was Little League or high school, they would have come back on Sunday, picked it up from the 13th. If Hamilton won, they would have won. If Manchester won, they would have probably taken a half-hour break and started up game 5. But they weren't able to do that. They had to completely start over game 4 on Sunday. Hamilton wound up winning. Had Manchester won, they would have played game 5 on Monday. But that just seesaw battle on Saturday, those 12 innings, I mean, that's going to be something that the people that were there will remember and talk about forever, in ITL lore. I mean, that's just crazy.
And we might be one of the only publications that has it on record, right? That 12 inning game is going to go wayside otherwise.
Obviously the Gloucester Times too, but right. That's just, Nick can tell you, he's probably watched Rusty Tucker throw 100 times and he's given up more than 2 runs. Once in all those times?
Yeah, I've seen him, and it was last Sunday. It was the first time I seen him allow more than 2, and it was only 2 earned runs. But he didn't. I think that was only the second time he's ever lost a game. I think one of the bunkers beat him a while back when the Topsfield Tories was still a team. I think he showed up out of nowhere and spun a 1-0 gem on him. But that's about it. I was just Rusty, as dominant as he is, that Hamilton just did an awesome job making him work. Going deep into counts all series long. They just, they didn't give away any at bats. They didn't let him mow him down in 3 pitches. They just battled.
Yeah, you go 10 and strike out 17. I mean, you got to get a little more support from. He only gave up the 2.
Oh yeah.
And obviously, Frenny's got a lot of power. He probably just ran into one there in the 6th, and I'm following the score from afar, thinking, oh, geez, Rusty's dealing, and Manchester's got a lead. Like, this thing's over. We're playing game 5 on Sunday, and that ended up not being the case. I mean, that's just like an epic baseball game.
And that happened. He's been in that spot before. I want to say it was 2019. They played Rowley, and it was Tucker and Cashman for Rowley went toe to toe. Both went 10 innings, and Tucker walked it off for the walk-off bomb after going 10 innings for the 3-2 win. It was that was one of the more ridiculous games I'd ever seen. This one sounds like it would at least rival it.
Unreal, absolutely unreal.
We said 43 years old. How much velocity he still got?
I don't know if he still gets to 90, but up until very recently, he could still get to 90, which is what most
Crazy.
guys haven't seen that in that league.
Right.
No,
right.
I would think not.
How tall is he? And
He's
right-hander?
not that tall, 5'10" lefty. He
Okay.
just has a freakish arm. He always has just had a freakish arm. He was a Padres farmhand back in the day, University of Maine. And he was on the fast track, double A, but he had Tommy John and he never really got it back after the Tommy John. He was pushing, 98, 99 before he got hurt. And, with the elbow injury, I mean, obviously he's still incredibly good, but, he couldn't push those upper 90s anymore.
Wow. I know we've talked about him a few times on the podcast over, over the years, it seems like. Yeah. Yeah. Good story. Nick Giannino, why don't you give us a golf note or two? What do you got for us?
Yeah, well, the amateur stuff is pretty much wrapped up now for the summer. So we're gonna be going into, fall golf with the high school teams here
Yeah.
really soon. They just started tryouts, but still got my North Shore Dream 18 running. We got 6 holes left now. 13 is going to be on Wednesday, 14 on Thursday, 15 on Friday, and then we'll wrap up the following week with the final 3 holes. So running out of courses here on the North Shore, may or may not extend a little bit out of the coverage area. I know a lot of golfers around here will travel a little bit to play a nice round. So we'll see, or either that or we might double up on one of the courses. But yeah, it's been good so far. It's been fun, talking to all these head pros and seeing how they would best play the hole, kind of what makes each hole unique and everything. And we've had a good variety of holes, I think, between the par 5s, par 4s, dog legs, uphill, downhill, different types of greens, things like that. Haven't included a ton of par 3s. So if we count out all the holes and all the strokes, this is probably going to end up after 18 holes being like a par 74, which you don't see on a golf course. But I like highlighting the longer holes a little bit more and some of the more challenging holes. So we'll see, but we'll try and sneak in a couple par 3s down the stretch here, and like I said, wrap it up next week. But it's been good, and I want to thank all the golf courses for their hospitality and working with me on these things, and we're happy to highlight some of the great courses. It's just a fantastic area for golf. We have so many options here, whether it be public or private. So yeah, it's been a fun project.
Are these all holes, Nick, that you've done very well on, like hit par, birdies on all these? I'm just wondering. No,
most of them, no. I don't know, maybe a few birdies, some pars, but a lot of these holes that I've chosen are difficult holes. The one we had in the paper today, the 12th hole at Bradford Country Club, I had someone comment, which I thought was pretty funny on Twitter, that we call it the North Shore Dream 18, and this guy said that hole's more like a nightmare, which is pretty accurate. I thought, talking to Nick Macario, who holds the record there, former St. John's prep player, we've written a lot about him in the amateur game, but he's had issues on that hole himself. He, even for the low handicappers, it's a tough one. Par 5 with the water right in the middle. You're going downhill. So yeah, most of these holes have been pretty challenging. A few of them are some of the easier holes on the course, but for the most part, these are difficult, challenging holes, and that's kind of what makes them stand out.
Matt Williams, you want to share anything with us? Anything that you've working on or will be working on? Or I know you and Phil have been doing those great sports debates. I think was it Mondays today? That was the Salem State one.
Yeah.
Or was that Friday?
Yeah, that was today. Yeah, they've been
Yeah.
interesting. The topics are not big arguments, but we tried to do some off the beaten path stuff that maybe you don't talk about too much. So hopefully people are enjoying it. We got all the practices have begun. The football team's been out there for a couple of days. The golf teams have all been out there for a couple of days. And as we record here on Monday, the rest of the teams are out there working. I'm seeing photos here of cross country, track, and field hockey, soccer. So, there's going to be competitions out there before you know it. It's going to be fun. A lot of new coaches, a lot of new faces, as it always is. And, you see summer wrapping up. I mean, it's in some ways it went fast. In some ways it went slow, but we're certainly going to be hitting the ground running on the local sports scene over the next 2-3 weeks.
Absolutely. So Nick Kukaru, I got to ask you, I'm going to circle back to one thing we were just talking about, those football teams, those Gloucester football teams. You said, I think 07 and 10 were the two best teams in your estimation, maybe?
Yeah, I
we-
mean, in 2009, people say that too. You can't go wrong with any of those, with any of the
but,
three.
or was it 15? Whatever. But in other words, of the names, give me a name or two of players. You mentioned Connor Russell at one point.
Yeah,
but
he was.
what are some of
Connor
the other
Russell and
names?
Brett Cahill were on the 2009 team. 2007, you had Andrew Fulford, Anthony Enderle with their backfield. Cam Marston was a real good lineman on that team. In 2010, Jordan Shares was the NEC MVP that year. Gilbert Brown was very good. Joe Avila was the quarterback. He came right after Cahill. Completely different type of player, but more of a push the envelope type of big play type of quarterback. And they hit some big plays. I think it was Bridgewater Raynham in the Super Bowl kind of forced him to throw, and they threw for a bunch of yards and a bunch of touchdowns. But yeah, those were kind of Chris Eunice. Chris Eunice was on the 2010 team. Actually, he played for all three. So
Okay.
Just to piggyback off that, Nick, you seem to, a lot of your really good teams that you covered seem to be towards the beginning of your tenure at the Times. I mean, do you see the trajectory? Let's say Gloucester football, for instance. You see it going back up at any point here in the near future, or are we kind of at a
Not like that. Yeah, it's a different, unfortunately, the makeup of the school's a lot different. There were probably 1,200 kids in Gloucester High School then. There's about 800 now. So they're one of the smaller schools in the NEC. But I think they're kind of going to be what they have been for the next few seasons. You might see, everybody has a stacked class every once in a while, but I don't think they're going to consistently get 80, 90 kids in the program anymore. You're looking at, I know Daniel Connor's very excited. He's got 63 kids in camp this year, and that's the most he's had by a long shot in his 5 years over there. So, yeah, it's going to be tough. We'll see. I'm actually spending my nights now coaching my son's Mighty Mites team. So maybe we'll try and build something up for the class of 2034. Might be one to watch out for.
We're going to be able to convince you to come out of retirement and cover any football games here on a whim?
I don't know. We'll see.
Well, I mean, that's Kooks, that's you're paying it forward. You know what I mean? Then you can come back, like once these kids that you're coaching now get up to the high school level, boom, you're back in as sports editor at the Gloucester Times, covering these great teams, 2019, no, 2029, whatever it's going to be, 2020, Nick Kukuru is back with his laptop or whatever technology brings us by that time, So,
if I could, sneak preview, I think, Gloucester field hockey, Gloucester boys ice hockey, I think those two teams have a legit shot to make some serious noise this season if we're talking Gloucester wise. And of course, there's going to be a Manchester Essex team, probably a girls team that's going to be phenomenal as well at some point.
Could be. What about Rockport?
Yeah, they had a little bit of a dry spell last year, but they're up and coming. Their basketball team looked like it showed a lot of signs. They only won 3 games, but they beat Georgetown at the end, so they could be kind of on the rise. Boys soccer is always right there, but it's tough sometimes with Rockport. They're such a small school. Sometimes they don't have they don't have the pool to choose from. Last couple years have been a little tough, but they could be up and down. They've had their share of ups too. I covered North finalists, North champions from Rockport, in the past.
But before you guys go, I know you mentioned Georgetown, but you were talking about basketball. But in football, no football program at Georgetown this year. They're going to merge up and co-op up with Pentucket, the former home of Nick Giannino. So I don't know what that means.
Not surprised to see that. They've we co-opted with them in golf. I'm not sure if they're still doing that. Maybe a couple other teams as well, but yeah, Georgetown's small. I know the football team has struggled with numbers for quite a few years now, so it makes sense. And Pentucket's low on numbers too, so it's beneficial to both sides, I think.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, Nick Kukuru, thank you so much for being our special guest here, and we'll have to have you back. When you make the rounds and you have a new release out or something, or whenever those things happen. You're going to promote something. We'll have you come back or whatever. But guys, anything else you guys want to share before we head out here?
No, next week we'll be previewing teams, right? We'll be right getting into the thick of it. So
getting a little closer to Labor Day, but we're still a ways away, right? But anyways, Nick,
if people are bored on Saturday, head down to Bertram Field. I think it's 2:00. There's a Witches. It's the Ken Perone Bowl. Brewer, Maine is coming down to play Salem. Two schools that were both coached by Ken Perone, and both are called the Witches. So that's pretty cool. So if you're looking to get your football fix in, if you're looking for a scrimmage, that's one that I would definitely recommend, because there's some really interesting flavor there with two teams that happen to be called the Witches. There can't be too many of those across the country. So
I was gonna say probably
that's
the
a
only
pretty
two
cool
in
event.
this around here.
I know.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a
And,
bizarre, that is a bizarre story though, when you think back at how that all played out. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And we should certainly we should certainly thank Nick. I mean, nothing on the other side of the bridge is ever going to be the same again. That's for
Yeah.
sure.
No, I mean, thank you
I
guys. I
second
mean, it
that.
was a lot of fun for the last 16 and a half years, for sure. There's definitely plenty I'm going to miss.
I've heard a couple of responses, and I think one thing that that I've heard a couple of times is that the Gloss, they're going to miss you, Nick. And what you do and what you have done there. It's those are big, like in essence, big shoes to fill, I guess. And so congrats to all you've been able to accomplish and do there, and of course, best of luck, and thanks so much for joining us here today. And we'll be back in touch with you, I'm sure. Here.
Nice, awesome. Thanks. No, much appreciated. Thank you.
There he is, Nick Kukuru, and of course, Phil Stacy is off this week, but we got Nick Giannino and Matt Williams here with us on the Sports Writers Podcast.